Hello and welcome to Ascending Order with me, Basil Valentine. Today, Monday, the 15th of September, 2025. It's great that you can join me live on X and on YouTube, and you can watch this show back on YouTube as well. Please do remember to like and subscribe. Everybody says so, but it does help the algorithm, as they say. Fascinating program today. We're taking the red pill, and I mean the really deep red pill when it comes to the Charlie Kirk assassination. I'll be joined on the half hour by the dean of all things deep state. I'm talking, of course, about the Professor Emeritus of the History and Philosophy of Science at the University of Minnesota Duluth, the one and only, the great James Fetzer. James is joining me on the half hour to deconstruct the Charlie Kirk assassination. Indeed, when I say deep red, I really mean it. Jim's got some ideas that a lot of people will no doubt find extremely challenging concerning the death of Charlie Kirk. But first, we must turn our attention, as we always do in this geopolitical news hour, to the main events of the day. And it seems, number one story today, that the Arab League is perhaps finally turning after 2 years of genocide. The attack on Qatar appears to have moved the Overton window when it comes to what is acceptable from the Zionist state. And the Qatari foreign minister and prime minister have both been speaking at the Arab League summit this morning, and it sounds as if they mean some kind of retaliation, as we can hear now.
Israel's continued involvement in violating international law, human rights, and diplomacy is reflected in the barbaric attack that took place in the city of Doha, in a residential area containing housing, schools, children's sports, and diplomatic missions. It led to the martyrdom of one of the security forces and the fall of civilian casualties. We cannot describe this aggression except that it is state terror in an approach pursued by the current extremist Israeli government, which flouts international law and targets the security of the region while brutally challenging the international legitimacy. We must not remain silent and calm in the face of these barbaric attacks, and take real and tangible measures on all levels to prevent further attacks, which, if we leave it, it will not stop. We will find ourselves, no matter what, in front of an endless series of blood and destruction, and no one will be far from its harm and danger.
Well, it remains to be seen whether the utterly toothless Arab League will actually do anything. I mean, the last thing any of us want to see is World War III, but Qatar's been a very influential player in the region, offering to act as an honest broker between the United States and Israel on the one hand, and Hamas and Hezbollah on the other. But when Israel starts targeting their so-called negotiators on the other side, then things become extremely difficult. And it seems like the Qataris are losing trust in the whole process. Likewise, Pakistan has been getting stuck in at the United Nations Security Council. Of course, the General Assembly is due to take place later this month, where France and the United Kingdom are amongst the countries who've said they will recognize a Palestinian state. Though where exactly it's supposed to be, I've absolutely no idea, because as we will see in a couple of minutes' time, what remains of Palestine is being rather quickly eviscerated by Israel. But here's an excerpt from the unusually strong diplomatic language used at the Security Council yesterday.
The representative of Pakistan has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm obliged to take the floor to respond to some comments. The representative of Israel perhaps did not listen attentively to all council members and other speakers in today's debate. And In our view, it is unacceptable, indeed ludicrous, for an aggressor, an occupier, a serial violator of UN Charter and international law, that is Israel, to abuse this chamber and disrespect the sanctity of this council. And this is not the first time. And by pointing fingers on others, baseless assertions primarily aimed at masking its own illegal actions and violations of international law. President, but that's not at all surprising. It is an occupier that does not listen to anyone, that does not pay heed to any advice, even from its friends, if there are any left, that refutes, and not just refutes, it threatens members of the international community, international media, international human rights and humanitarian organizations, doesn't listen to the ICJ or the ICC, and threatens the UN and its senior officials. And it does that with impunity, shielded by its apologists who time and again acquiesce in its illegal actions and defiance of the international community.
Pakistan's representative to the Security Council there, Marco Rubio, that nasty little runt, and I choose my words very carefully. He wants to ban, or rather take away, the passports of American citizens who criticize Israel. Some people would call that treason. And just this morning, he's been saying that efforts to recognize a Palestinian state will only prolong the war. Really bizarre logic. It isn't a war anyway, Marco. It's a Holocaust. It's genocide. And it's completely out of control. Just because we don't see the pictures from Gaza every day or hear about the number of casualties on the BBC doesn't mean that dozens of people, many of them children, are not murdered on a regular basis. In fact, the latest figure, here it is, Professors Dr. Gillian Pollier and Professor Richard Hill have calculated the total death toll for Gaza since October the 7th as 680,000 dead. Now, these are really apocalyptic numbers. Let's not forget Napoleon lost 500,000 men on his incursion into Russia. I think that's roughly the number of men that were lost in the total Battle of the Somme. It was 70,000 in one day, the Somme, and then the total was something like that over the course of several months. These are figures from previous generations, but even on those occasions, the vast majority of the dead were, of course, combatants. But in this case, Professors Pollier and Hill have said that they estimate 350,000 of those 680,000 dead are children under the age of 7. Now, just imagine for a moment 350,000 British children had been murdered, or for that matter, 350,000 Israeli children. At the moment in Gaza, what's happening is they're basically leveling the place as quickly as possible. I make no apology for showing some pictures here now from social media of some of the carnage and destruction, the wanton destruction of residential buildings people given 10 minutes to flee with whatever they can grab before the house or apartment block they've been living in was detonated. Here's an example. This is yesterday, and it's continuing today. And you can hear the cries of the children there. That's actually bombing a refugee camp of tents. People already displaced, as you can see. Here's some more footage of the most recent destruction.
قصف عنيف على حي الشاطئ. والله في معسكر أولاد. كيف تقلب يا ولدي لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أطفال
few of the 350,000 children murdered by Israel, yet the United Kingdom is still to this day providing diplomatic cover and supplying weapons. The training college for officers has apparently just last week stopped training Israeli officers, much to the irritation of people like David Collier and the Zionist faction in the UK. They think it's appalling and that the slaughter of children must, of course, continue under any circumstances. The rest of the world is waking up to the fact that the Zionist death machine is determined to carry on killing. They've rejected every ceasefire proposal. Hamas have most recently offered to leave Gaza for a third country, and that request has been denied because, of course, they want to carry on killing everyone and have been sabotaging the talks in order to do so.
Well, the White House is becoming increasingly concerned about the state of the ceasefire negotiations. It still wants to see them resume at some point, but feels that they've been massively derailed, which is an understatement, of course. But could they be derailed permanently? That is the serious concern, particularly from the White House, that has been so monumental in trying to galvanize these conversations. Producing a path to peace was their hope, and now many top aides, according to sources, feeling like Israel has somewhat sabotaged the ceasefire negotiations. That's not just the frustration of Donald Trump or indeed the White House. That is a frustration that's coming across the board, across the region, across the European nations, and also across the pond in the United States as well. Many people saying, how on earth can these ceasefire negotiations resume, considering Israel is threatening more action? Of course, Hamas demands are still very much the same. They want to see a total end to the war in Gaza, a permanent one at that, and a withdrawal of all Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip. Israel doesn't seem interested in it whatsoever. Some would say not only the attempt to kill off Hamas, but it's also an attempt to kill off diplomacy.
Well, they've been very successful at that. They've been very successful at killing off Palestinians as well. Amongst the last groups to stay in Gaza City, which is being reduced to rubble literally as we speak, are the Christians of the Catholic community and the Orthodox community, apparently invisible to the so-called Christian Zionists in the United States. They've refused to leave, which means they're likely to be murdered. We'd like to know whose side the likes of Mike Huckabee, the moronic American ambassador to Israel. Here's a report on the remaining Christians in Gaza City.
Israel has told the Christians, leave, get out, evacuate. And the two most important clergy, the Catholic Patriarch of Jerusalem and the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem have come together and said, we're not leaving. The nuns, Mother Teresa's nuns, the missionaries of charity, the clergy, the Greek Orthodox, the Roman Catholic clergy, they're saying, we're not leaving. You've bombed our churches. People died. 2 Catholic women were shot in the courtyard by Israeli snipers. The Eastern Orthodox Church has been bombed. Dozens and dozens of people killed. And Israel says, time for y'all to get out. Christians, get out. And so the clergy and the nuns have said, we're not leaving. We're staying with our people, the people who are starving, who are wounded, who are displaced, whose homes have been destroyed. We represent Jesus Christ. Thank you very much, Israel. You think you're Israel. You think you're the 12 tribes of Israel. You think you're the fulfillment of what Moses constituted in Deuteronomy. We're the Israel. We're the chosen people. You know, St. Paul says that if you have Christ, the promises of Abraham apply to you, whether you're a man or a woman, a Jew or a Gentile. Those who belong to Christ receive the promises of Abraham. This is where Ted Cruz got it wrong. He said, well, I learned in Sunday school that if you bless Israel, you're blessed. If you curse Israel, you're cursed. Those promises in Genesis chapter 12, which he couldn't cite, Tucker Carlson had to cite them for him. St. Paul says that those covenantal blessings belong currently to those who are in Jesus Christ, who are elect and chosen in Jesus Christ, who is the elect and chosen one of God, the Son of God, the Messiah, the King of Kings, the King of the Jews, the Lord of Lords, fully God, fully man, present on the altars of the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. I'm really impressed by these patriarchs. We need to pray for those Christians, for those nuns, those brides of Christ, Orthodox and Catholic, for the bishops. Tanks could come in. This could be it. Crystal Williamson says, pray the Michael the Archangel prayer to protect the church in Gaza. I think we should do that right now. Let's do it. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Points made there. The whole point of the new covenant, the mission of Jesus Christ, whether or not you're a Christian, whether you believe it's another matter, of course, but it's the simple matter of fact that the new covenant is indeed between the followers of Christ. That's the new Israel, basically, as the speaker pointed out there. The whole Christian Zionism thing is a complete contradiction in terms. We'll be coming on in the second half of the program to Charlie Kirk's views on all that and how he may have been beginning to dissent from so-called Christian Zionism and wake up to the fact that Zionism and Christianity are completely incompatible, not least because of the Zionist belief in vengeance and that mercy is indeed a sign of weakness. Christ's whole message was one of forgiveness, turning the other cheek, compassion, not qualities that we see displayed by the Israeli death machine. The speaker there also mentioned the snipers. 2 Catholic nuns were sniped. And Professor Nick Maynard is one of the British surgeons that's been in Gaza and seen for the first hand the horrors of the Israeli snipers.
A lot of doctors I know who have taken in formula feed because they knew there was such a shortage. None has been allowed in by the Israelis since the last ceasefire.
So you go through a checkpoint, you get searched as a doctor, and if you've got any baby formula in your pockets or in your bag, they will confiscate it from you?
Very specifically confiscating that. Nothing else. I cannot think of any reason why they would confiscate formula feed. There was a very clear pattern of injuries, a cluster of injuries to specific body parts on particular days. So one day, for example, we'd see patients coming in with gunshot wounds just to the head and neck. On another day, they'd be coming in with gunshot wounds to the chest or the abdomen. The next day, the legs. On one day, about 12 days ago, we saw 4 young teenage boys, 13, 14, all of whom had been shot specifically in the testicles.
Goodness me.
So the very clear clustering of these injuries appeared to us like a target practice again.
It appears that Israelis have been using Palestinian children as target practice. Now, I'm delighted to say, joining me for the first time on Ascending Order, but I sincerely hope and believe it won't be the last. is my good friend and the world's leading expert on the John F. Kennedy assassination and 9/11, the one and only, the great, legendary emeritus professor of the philosophy of science at the University of Minnesota, Duluth, James Fetzer. Welcome to the program, Jim.
Oh, Basil, thank you for those kind remarks. It's a pleasure to join you again. And I think, yes, Charlie Kirk was wandering off the Zionist reservation and they didn't like it. He had a $40 million war chest for Turning Point USA. He was responding to the students of Gen Z who were very much supportive of Hamas rather than of Israel. He'd gone on radio shows and talked about how he'd been to Israel. He'd visited the wall, that there's no way in which the official narrative made any sense, that it was not un-American or anti-Semitic to raise questions about it. He also was wondering whether the United States ought to be supporting the genocide in Gaza. He'd actually traveled to the White House to tell Donald Trump directly that he thought bombing Iran was a bad idea. So, Basil, I think you're completely right to imply Charlie was no longer fully on board and they didn't like it. In fact, now we know in the aftermath, Ben Shapiro is as zealous a Zionist as we find on the face of earth, is stepping in to replace him, which is a massive turn for the worse. I believe it's going to split the Turning Point movement, and that Charlie was actually in a position to do a lot of good. So, according to the official story, he was taken out and done so, by the way, in a manner that's kosher. This shot through the neck, that's a way in which you are to slaughter, beef or whatever for meals, to be kosher about it. So there are all kinds of signs. And indeed, Basil, my initial take was this had been an IDF sniper, probably from a couple of 100 yards back. They blamed this student who was on top of a building. We'll take a closer look at that. And that it had been very carefully orchestrated to take him out in a dramatic way. So you not only get rid of the threat Charlie Kirk posed, but you set an example of what can happen for those who likewise decide no longer to follow the line. I think he was doing a lot of good, Basil, and that's why they took him out.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Jim. One of the first things that struck me was the similarities to the JFK assassination, a public execution, a demonstration of power. Let's have a look, first of all, at some footage of the incident itself.
Natin siya. Ayun, nahuli kami yung gunman, mga idol.
Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
Shot right there. Gunshot. Look at him. Oh, he's shot, dude. He's shot.
Looks like a handgun that chap's carrying. There were, of course, these mysterious hand signals as well being given out by Charlie Security. Charlie Security, supposedly an Israeli firm. Let's just have a look at those hand signals quickly.
Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
Now, the timing of those immediately before the shooting is extremely suspect, isn't it? Likewise, that handgun, as is often the case, Jim, as was certainly the case, as we know with JFK, they don't take the chance of only one shooter. There's often a second shooter as backup in case the first shot missed, if they're determined to get somebody out of there.
Oh, you're 100% correct, Basil. And the fact is, this case is so laden with anomalies where there oughtn't to be any, that many of us have drawn the conclusion that there's something more to it behind the story we've been given, which you are very accurately recounting. And if we look, for example, at the purported shooter, Basil, if you happen to have that clip handy, that's a great place to begin, because they claim he was on a rooftop. We see him running, then he jumps down onto the ground. But there's something missing there, Basil. He doesn't have the weapon. Before the jump,
there he is. It's a big jump, first of all. I mean, that's about a 16 or 18 foot jump by the looks of it off that roof.
Yes.
He doesn't, as you're right, he doesn't appear to have the gun with him. The gun that they claim he had, I believe a Mauser or something, was made in the 19th century. Am I right?
Well, it's an excellent weapon, but it's bulky. I mean, it has a very heavy barrel. The claim has been, Basil, that he disassembled the weapon and that he had part of it in his bag and the other part, the barrel, in his trousers. Now, think about how absurd that is. If you were to jump down like that, you're going to crunch. There's actually video further down that link, I think, if we were to find it. But he would smash himself. I mean, the barrel would puncture his intestine. He'd probably be dead from the jump if he had the barrel in his leg. And when you see him running across the roof, there's no sign of any metallic object in his leg. Now, that raises the following conundrum. The weapon was found in the woods, wrapped in a towel, assembled. Now, you can disassemble this weapon, but it requires a lot of torque and a special wrench. And frankly, I don't think that kid, the one that's been fingered as a shooter, even had the strength to disassemble it, nor the time. I mean, he's moving too rapidly. You'd have to disassemble the weapon, do whatever, and then you'd reassemble it while you're making your escape. Basil, it doesn't add up. There's something totally wrong with his story.
No, absolutely. It doesn't make any sense at all. Apparently, it would take a seasoned gunsmith at least 15 minutes to dismantle that weapon and put it back together again. And he wasn't a seasoned gunsmith, and he didn't have any tools. Here is the gun reassembled. Apparently, the scope is in the wrong position. You wouldn't be able to fire it with the scope in that position accurately anyway. And secondly, the claim is it was found in a wooded area. And there are no wooded areas within several miles of the University of Utah. There is no wooded area.
And Basil, that doesn't even appear to be a Mauser. That appears to be a Savage, not even the right make. So we're getting into some sticky wickets here. I mean,
it's so reminiscent of that Photoshop picture of Oswald, isn't it, with the gun?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the parallels are eerie.
Put on the cover of Life magazine. Yes. You're 100% correct, Basil. Now, not only that, but we have the very peculiarities about the shooting. It looks as though we have the blood gushing out the side of his neck, but it doesn't look right. We have a series of video clips going through it, Basil, we might share.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to upload those for various. They were embedded on websites, and I couldn't grab them. But basically, yeah, I know. But the long and the short of it is that the claim, at least, is that the blood coming out of his neck was CGI. Now, I must admit, I'm struggling with that. There appears to be footage of the blood running down his sleeve, and then as the tape rolls on, it goes back up again. In other words, that the CGI is faulty in some way. But is he dead or is he alive? The other thing that's come to light very quickly, because we could take it on from here, is who was actually killed. On the left, we've got the most recent Charlie Kirk, and on the right, what I think is the original. Those are two different people. First of all,
Yeah, look at
there's
the
no
teeth.
doubt.
Look at the teeth.
Yeah, exactly. They're completely different. The
But
gums and
regarding
everything.
this CGI thing, Basil, I don't think it's CGI, but the blood didn't look right to me at all. Now, there are photographs from the side that show Charlie seemed to have a pack of some kind on his back. And there's a little tiny nozzle here right behind his neck. It looks as though there's a pump to pump out the blood. In other words, that this is a Hollywood special effect taking place. So it doesn't require CGI. The blood never looked right to me. It's not even the right color. It's too dark. That would be from a vein rather than an artery. If it's a vein, you could compress it and possibly even save his life. But we got a mortician who's claiming, no, this is a classic result. She's done lots of autopsies, and he would have been dead in about 20 seconds, rather like our Ukrainian girl on the subway, Basil. And then I say, okay, suppose Charlie's dead in 20 seconds. That is a murder scene, a crime scene. You leave the body in place. But what happens? He's got a group of his buddies rushing him off to an SUV. And that's completely wrong. If he's dead, it's a murder scene and you do not disturb it. So I think that this is another anomaly. And there are many, many, many. Some have noticed, for example, the ring on his left hand. It's first on his ring finger, then it moves to his pinky, Basil. We got a break.
Counting or not counting gang violence? Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
That was the moments immediately before the shooting. They haven't recovered the bullet, apparently. That's the other thing. And all this stuff about engraved bullets with messages from violent transsexuals. I mean, we were told during the Biden administration that the chief terror threat in the United States came from white nationalists and white supremacists. Now we're in a Republican administration. It appears there's a new threat coming from radicalized lefties and transsexuals. It's as if the baton has been passed in terms of these ultimate culprits, Jim. I don't believe any of it.
Basil, you're so right. Bibi Netanyahu was advancing an absurd theory right off the bat. Greta von Susteren interviewed him, asked him at the end about this, and he said, we're accused of everything from pushing the sun, affecting the moon, and he goes back to the Holocaust, drinking blood at children, killing them in the Middle Ages. Some of these charges, I believe, in fact, are true, but he was flustered to be asked, and he's come up with the absurd theory. It was Islamists and progressives who did this, because apparently the kid they're trying to finger is supposed to be some kind of tranny or in transition or have a boyfriend who's
absolutely. Again, that's the way it doesn't make sense, because he was supposed to be living with his parents. He was an honors student who got a $32,000 scholarship to the University of Utah and then dropped out after a year to go to a technical college to become an electrician. He had a $32,000 scholarship to study mechanical engineering, which is absolutely gold dust in the US these days. And he left all that behind in order to go to what is effectively a second-rate college to become an electrician. More anomalies. This one you drew my attention to, which is Charlie's widow, Erica. Now, this would appear to feed into the idea that he perhaps isn't actually dead and the whole thing was a Hollywood production, which before you start saying in the chat and all the comments and all the rest of it, how dare you, it's happened before the Hollywood production. Just have a look at the Boston bombing. People with half a leg and all the rest of it couldn't possibly have survived with those injuries. That was one of the most ridiculous scenarios of all time, and this one is up there with it.
I want to thank the staffers of his amazing Charlie Kirk show.
I mean, who would giggle? I mean, if you've just been bereaved like that of the love of your life, why would you start giggling at that point? I mean, that's really bizarre. We'll just listen to a few minutes more of this, couple minutes more.
I want to thank the staffers of his amazing Charlie Kirk show, who helped him broadcast from this studio, this chair. Every day he loved it. He loved what he did. I want to thank the millions of people who have shown their love for Charlie here in Phoenix, across America, and worldwide. I want to thank my husband's dear friend, Vice President Vance, and his phenomenal wife, Usha, for their love and support. You guys honored my husband so well, bringing him home. You both are tremendous. I want to thank President Trump and his incredible family for the same.
Forgive me for what I'm about to say, Jim, but the way Americans present their emotions can sometimes seem synthetic to those of us on this side of the pond. It's always rather schmaltzy, but it's difficult to tell there whether Erica is being 100% genuine or acting. Was that sniggering at the beginning out of nervousness? I don't know. But very quickly, before I give you the floor again.
Let me add. I think it's completely insincere. She's been described as the worst crisis actor ever. And I have a friend who has Screen Actor Guild credit. She's an actress. And she initially wasn't so convinced, but after I asked, she went back and looked and found sign after sign that this was a feigned performance. And, later they try to have her show more grief at what's supposed to be the casket. And she's looking at a hand, which appears to be rubber. They don't actually show the face because it's pretty obvious this is a mannequin. So when we start adding up the anomalies, Basil, you got to ask yourself, what in the hell is going on here? Because it does not add up.
No, it doesn't. I agree. And here's another aspect that in particular that doesn't add up when it comes to the shooter. This was the FBI talking about the shooter's behavior immediately after the event. And it sounds like a clip from a Marx Brothers film, frankly.
Yes. So when he's first spotted on campus, he has different clothing on, and then he changes clothing on the roof, and then changed back into that clothing at some point, so that when he was apprehended, when he was arrested, the clothing matched the clothing he had on before the shooting here at UVU.
This is so absurd, Basil. And that's Kash Patel right behind him. That's the head of the FBI. This is the ludicrous theory of our FBI. I'm telling you, this is hilarious. And the consequences, Basil, are catastrophic for the Zionists because the reaction has been overwhelming. If you assume what most are going to conclude, that this was a Zionist hit to shut him up. He'd wandered off the reservation to remove the threat, to set an example, and to install Ben Shapiro to make Turning Point a 100% Jewish committed organization. The reaction has been unbelievable worldwide. Nobody's buying it. Nobody buys the Zionists, meaning those who believe it are rejecting Zionism, calling out Israel. They're holding Israel responsible. I think this has turned out to be a catastrophe for Zionism.
Well, what they're attempting to do is lionize him in Israel. A mural appeared of Charlie in Tel Aviv within a few hours of him being killed. Of course, Netanyahu posted on X 4 times within a few hours about Charlie, and has sought to sort of enshrine him as an Israeli hero. Apparently, they're going to name a roundabout after him. The fact that he was actually, as you say, beginning to dissent from the Zionist narratives, that's all been glossed over. But Rabbi Pesach Velicki gave Charlie a talking to about staying on the reservation before he died.
And Charlie had criticisms for the state of Israel. He was very supportive and really loved the state of Israel and the Jewish people, but he also had his criticisms. And it really hurt him when the Jewish community came down on him for platforming certain speakers at his last conference who were anti-Israel and even slid into anti-Semitism. And while I was not happy that Charlie had given the stage to people like Tucker Carlson who were spewing venom about the Jewish state, I understood where Charlie was coming from. Charlie was a big believer in the open marketplace of ideas and allowing all opinions to be heard, letting the best opinions win. That's why he built his career on those famous debates, going to college campuses to engage in honest dialogue, letting every opinion have its moment and letting people decide what is true. And therefore, he really believed, to a fault, I believe, in allowing every single voice to be heard. Now, again, was I happy that he was platforming people who were spewing anti-Israel and anti-Semitic messages? Of course not. But when so many people in the Jewish community and the pro-Israel community were criticizing Charlie so harshly for platforming these problematic voices, he was very hurt. And he was hurt because what many people don't realize is that Charlie spent a lot of his time defending Israel, both publicly at the college campus events that he was so famous for. Many people don't realize that upwards of 40 or 50% of all of the questions Charlie would receive, the challenges that he would get at these campus events from students, were attacking Israel and attacking Charlie for being so pro-Israel. And also privately, there were many other prominent people in the America First movement who would privately speak to Charlie and message him, trying to get him to drop his support for Israel. So he was out there defending Israel on a regular basis, even with all his criticisms. It really hurt him when there was this harsh criticism calling him all kinds of names because he was willing to platform voices the pro-Israel community or the Jewish community were uncomfortable with.
They were indeed extremely uncomfortable. It's interesting. He lumps Tucker Carlson and, of course, Candace Owens, two people who were particularly close to Charlie, but who have recently become very vocal critics of Israel and, indeed, more importantly, almost the wider Zionist power configuration in the United States.
Yes, Basil. By the way, Charlie had confided, and others like Clayton Morris have redacted, that he was apprehensive that the Israelis were going to come after him, that he might be hit because he was being critical. So what is it to be anti-Semitic in the eyes of these Israeli leaders? If you don't support genocide, mass murder, you're anti-Semitic. If you don't support the bombing of Iran, which is the greatest peace-loving nation in the world today, having not launched a war of aggression against any other state since 1775, you're being anti-Israel. I mean, this is ludicrous. Charlie was finding his way to moral ground and realizing the stances that he had been supporting in the past were wrong. They were fundamentally mistaken. They were violations of international law, the UN Charter, the Geneva Conventions. They were inhumane and immoral. And for that, we're going to punish him. And I think he faked his own death because he was going to be targeted. Now, when you point out that Bibi 4 different times is speaking out, that's crazy. What is a PM of Israel doing speaking out 4 times about an American political activist? And when we see the airwaves saturated with coverage, you know, almost certain it's virtually a litmus test that it's a fake event. But the fact is, everyone who believes it, and Basil, no matter how much we talk about it, 95% of the world believes it was a real hit and that he really is dead. That hurts the Zionism. I think it's actually a breakthrough moment. I would even call it a turning point.
I was watching a psychic this morning, actually, on YouTube. Some of these people are very interesting. She said that she had been warned in advance that Israel was planning to assassinate him, but that the so-called white hats had protected him. So that would fit with your theory, certainly, Jim. Whether he's alive or dead, he certainly said things that would get him killed, most particularly about October the 7th, the pretext for the Gaza Holocaust. And this clip in particular, well, you know, I'll talk about how it relates to Netanyahu afterwards. But first, let's hear it from Charlie himself.
I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still have the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel is on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is. Yeah. And you're trying to tell me that they're going to concerts and kibbutzes and schools and by report
alone would have been enough to get him bumped off, particularly if he was prepared to repeat those questions. He also made remarks about how Zionist billionaires were behind the open border policy and other neoliberal policies in the United States. And yet, of course, the talking heads on Fox are determined to lionize him. We'll hear very quickly from Noah Tishby.
I think Bibi Netanyahu is correct in everything that he said about Charlie Kirk. And one of the things that is important for us to understand is that Charlie, as a Christian man, had no confusion about the indigeneity of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. And as a great man, he had no confusion as to who's right and who's wrong in the Middle East. There are two sides in the Middle East. One side is on the side of modernity and progress and human rights and liberty, and the other side is on the side of jihadism. And you can actually...
I find it quite laughable, really, to hear her say that one side is on the side of human rights when they've slaughtered 680,000 people, including 350,000 children, and keep the remainder caged up. I mean, it's off the charts, the lack of self-awareness. But as you say, Charlie had confided to people that he was afraid that if he strayed off the reservation, Israel would get him. And Max Blumenthal pointed out the other day on the Grey Zone that fear of Israel and what they can do to you if you step out of line in American politics extends as far as the president, as we can hear now.
Does the president of the United States fear for his life?
Yes. Yes, I mean, obviously he fears for his life, and I was told that he feared for his life before the two assassination attempts, one coming within a millimeter of striking his head. I mean, let's not forget about that.
But I mean, just to clarify, he doesn't fear for his life because of Ireland.
I mean, I've been told, yes, that Israel is a major source of concern for Trump. I mean, think about it. What would happen
this
if
is
the
our
president
ally.
If he suspended arms
to
if he suspended arms to a country that carries out assassinations all across the globe, that specializes in assassinations, that has an entire wing of its intelligence services that conducts assassinations, including with household goods like pagers, would you not be scared? So yes, Trump is scared. And what I learned from this source, who is a Trump insider, someone who talks to who talks to people in the Oval Office, people close to Trump, is that during one of Netanyahu's many visits to the U.S. this year, some figures in his retinue, Israeli agents, placed electronic devices on emergency response Secret Service vehicles the Secret Service found them and they reported this to the White House. You know, these would be emergency response vehicles that would respond to an incident potentially involving the president.
So there you go. And indeed, Israel does have its own specialist assassination service, as detailed in Ronan Bergen's excellent book, Rise and Kill First, which is what they like to do. Jim.
Also, you're mentioning that book. Do you realize a book about the assassination Charlie Kirk appeared on the 9th when the assassination or attempt or fakery didn't occur until the 10th? I mean, it's just outrageous how they do this. This is like donation website for Sandy Hook, you know, showing up before the event. And by the way, Butler was a staged event. That was not a real assassination attempt. When Trump went back down behind the stage, he used kind of a packet of blood. His ear actually is undamaged. We've got close-ups of it. He moved the photographers over for the money shot of him fist pumping and all that. It was another stage. Basil, it's amazing how many of these politically controversial events in America are actually staged events, which Obama legalized by the modernization of the Smith-Munn Act in 1948 that precluded the use of the same techniques of propaganda within the United States that were being allowed without just in time to bring us Sandy Hook.
And that particular incident, given the hot water that it's got you into, what do you think will be the fallout from Kirk's assassination? As you said, it looks like Ben Shapiro wants to take over Turning Point USA, but I think of all these events, this one has had the biggest pushback against the automatic official narrative that I've ever seen. People really are questioning the story we are being sold, none more so than the American commentator Jackson Hinkle. We'll just hear from him before I give you the floor.
Why is there not a single photo of the suspect in the Charlie Kirk tragedy with the rifle that they claim they found in the wooded area near the Utah Valley University campus? Just think about that for a second. Hundreds of security cameras, CCTV footage, but for some reason, before, after, or during the tragedy, there is no footage, as of right now, that has been released of the suspect with the rifle. I find that to be a little bit odd. I find it odd that no one in the mainstream media is asking that question. If the suspect took that rifle and placed it in the nearby wooded area, as we're being told, why are there not photos of him carrying that off the roof? We have a video of him jumping off the roof, but it doesn't appear that he was carrying the rifle. Some might say, well, Jackson, maybe he disassembled the rifle. I don't think that could have fit in his small knapsack that he was carrying with him. And if he did disassemble the rifle, why was the rifle found in the wooded area reassembled with the scope on it? Something is not adding up here. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just simply wondering what's going on and why no one in the mainstream media is asking this very simple question. They also told us that he was wearing tactical gear, but in the photos, he's not wearing any tactical gear. So did he disassemble his rifle and change his clothes within seconds? And if he did change his clothes, why don't we have any photos of the tactical gear that he was wearing? Why don't we just have photos of this Mauser rifle that was found in a nearby wooded area? And also, one last thing. The FBI claims that this conversation took place before and right after the tragedy on Discord with some of his friends about where he left the rifle and his clothes, his tactical gear and whatnot. But Discord came out with an official statement saying no such conversation took place on our platform. So who's lying, Discord or the FBI? Why is no one addressing this? It's very odd.
Jim?
Yeah, it's fascinating. This is just wonderful. It's a perfect storm because you have a very simple event, a single shot with a rifle and apparent death that's just loaded with anomalies where there shouldn't be any anomalies. And let us not overlook the very significance of the timing. This is done like this 2.5 hours before the major 9/11 conference would open in Washington, D.C. at 5 p.m. Just in time for Bibi to get out there, Trump to make an announcement, and to smother the news so that we hardly hear a peep about the 9/11 conference, Basil. That's not mere coincidence. And let me say, Trump, his behavior has been highly anomalous too. He was asked by a reporter, how is he dealing with Charlie Kirk's death? And he says, oh, something like, very well. By the way, I've got a new ballroom I'm putting up and it's going to be glorious. He spent a huge amount of time in the ballroom and showed no affect, no concern about Charlie Kirk. I'm telling you, this is beautiful. It's catastrophic for Zionism because people are seeing through these false flags, these stage events. They're realizing how often they're played. So either way, it's a win-win. If you think the event was authentic, you hold it against Israel and you see what monsters they are. If you think it's fake, you not only already know what monsters Israel are, but it's a perfect illustration of faking an event, in this case, for good purpose. I'm not disapproving of Charlie having faked his death when he thought he was going to be targeted. And I mean, it's odd for me to say a psychic may have it right, but that the White Hats came to his aid may be exactly what happened here, Basil.
Now, Jim, before we go, all this was smuggled through as well, wasn't it? At the same time, the bill that would allow Marco Rubio to revoke the passports of U.S. citizens if they criticize Israel. Likewise, a bill went through which I think means that you can be prosecuted for criticizing Israel, the United States. Some of these things are going to have to go to the Supreme Court, aren't they?
Yes. This is terrible, and it reflects the extent to which Israel is running the American government. It's outrageous, but Basel people are waking up, and no incident is going to be more effective in that regard than this one. Believe it or not, it's happening. The people are awakening worldwide.
I sincerely hope, and indeed I believe you're right. Jim Fetzer, do join me again on Ascending Order. It would be great to have you on a regular basis. Your breadth of knowledge and wisdom are much appreciated by our viewers and listeners. Thank you for today.
My great pleasure, Basil. That I would be glad to do.
There he goes. That's Jim Fetzer. I'm Basil Valentine. I'll be back again at the same time tomorrow with another Ascending Order where we deconstruct surely the most extraordinary era in geopolitics that we could possibly have imagined. These are dark days in many ways, but as they say, it's always darkest before the dawn. See you all again tomorrow.